All right, welcome back to another episode of the Cody Tucker Show. As always, I'm your host, Cody Tucker. It's been a hell of a week. This is the week of the big game. Initials SB, which apparently, if you say out loud in any fucking platform, you are going to get met by the Goodell Gestapo. So, the American Football League of America's championship game. I mean, it is insane that you can't say Super Bowl. Oh, fuck. Well, whatever. The Super Bowl. The goddamn Super Bowl's coming up. And I've been asked by multiple people to give my prediction as to... Actually, before we start, if you've noticed that I look like a fucking 7-year-old, it is because I decided to shave my little white trash goatee last night in a not so well lit environment. And needless to say, I completely fucked up, and now I'm having to start from scratch. And as someone who is morbidly obese and has this bullshit going on, it's a mistake that I can't really be affording to make. So go ahead and get your yuck yucks and chuckles out of the way. We have serious business to attend to. So, anyways, so big game coming up. My prediction is that this will be the worst Super Bowl of all time. I mean, I don't know who the fuck's going to win. I mean, I guess most likely the fucking Chiefs. But it is... I have never looked forward to a Super Bowl less than this year's Super Bowl. It is... Whew, boy. I mean, okay, so as a, diehard Raiders fan, the team that I hate the most in all of sports is the Kansas City Chiefs. And I mean, it comes with the territory of being a Raiders fan. You fucking hate the Chiefs. I hate the Broncos and the Chargers as well, but the Chiefs, number one. And so I have really been upset with the fact that they're going to the Super Bowl and will most likely win. I mean, it is, goddamn, like if you ever watch a Chiefs game, especially like if they're playing in Kansas City, goddamn, like, I mean, you don't have to be like really a Raiders fan to get that they're just so fucking annoying with their little like ho ho ho. like that's what you think a fucking Indian sounds like, you racist sexist shit. I mean, no, they obviously went oh no. Uh-oh. How? Yeah, anyways, this is not good. Not a good start to this. Anyways. I'm just not looking forward to this. I don't fucking like the Kansas City Chiefs. The team I hate the most. So I definitely don't want to be in the Super Bowl. But there is, in general, a plus side to that, which means that whoever they're playing, I will immediately become a fan of for that one day. Like, whatever team it is they're playing, hey, guess, like, I'm on your fucking bandwagon now. Except they're playing the goddamn Philadelphia Eagles, who, as a fan base, and I don't give a fuck about it, if there happens to be a fucking person listening to this who is from Philadelphia, y'all are the most annoying sons of bitches on the planet. As a fan base, you are way more annoying than the Chiefs. And the Chiefs do this racist shit fucking, every time there's a goddamn first down. So that really says a lot about how obnoxious the fucking Eagles fans are. So I was like, God damn, like, I can't even decide because of how much I hate both of these teams. There's a good chance I won't even watch it, which it'll be the first year since I can remember. It'll be the first year that I haven't watched a Super Bowl, and most likely I will not be watching it. Like, this is, now I know, like, how, all the fucking rednecks around me felt, when Kaepernick was taking a knee. They're like, I'm boycotting this shit. Like, dude, I'm boycotting the fucking Super Bowl. Unless they can pick two different teams to be in the damn thing, I'm boycotting. And then, a lot of the times because sometimes the Super Bowl really is kind of boring. Like, a lot of the times it is teams you're like, God damn, like, we got to see this shit again. But then the halftime show, you're like, oh, well, halftime show should be pretty fun. Not this year. I mean, it's goddamn fucking Riri, which, unless Rihanna goes up there and shoots fucking ping pong balls out of her snoot for 15 minutes, I don't give a shit. I mean, I can't name, besides that Umbrella bullshit, I can't name one fucking Rihanna song. And, maybe I'm just too, like, old in the head, but fucking new music sucks. I mean, it's all so bad. So I actually, for some reason, paid attention to the Grammys this year, which I have never done. I mean, not in a long, long time. And I was like, man, I haven't heard one of these songs. I haven't heard of any of these albums. I mean, so I was like, all right, I'm going to go through and listen to these and just see if, like, if they're getting nominated for Grammys, maybe they are pretty good. And maybe I just don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Turns out I do know what the hell I'm talking about. My taste in music has not failed me yet. And boy, every one of these albums are just big old hunks of shit. Like, it is, god damn, it's rough. Like, so I went through and I first, I listened to, like, Beyonce's album, Harry Styles, which I will say, Harry Styles' album is not, it's not horrible. It's not, it's not fucking great. But, it just shows, like, the standards of music now for that to be the album of the year. And you're like, oh my God. Like, this is the best album of the entire year. Woo! But, it is what it is. I think in some ways I do hate anything that's new. Because, like, and kind of in a way, like, stuck in my ways. Which is crazy to be stuck in your ways, when you're in your 20s. But to be honest, I've been stuck in my ways since I was like 13. I was like a fucking curmudgeon, even at, in like 6th grade. Like, I was basically Larry David in Curb Your Enthusiasm going into middle school. That's probably not good, but it is what it is. But yeah, and boy, like, I try not to even pay attention to a lot of the shit that's going on social media. If you were wondering what that was, I just cracked my sternum, which, that can't be healthy. God damn. I didn't think it was going to make much of a noise, but I'm pretty sure this old fucker picked it up. Anyways. Yeah, I just have a thing where, like, I like the music from, early 2000s is really, like, my cutoff. And then I like, everything before that. Specifically, like, 70s, 80s, 90s. That's a pretty big, it's hard to say specific and then you name fucking 30 years worth of music. Jesus, I'm retarded. Okay, specifically, like, the 70s. Like, that is my peak era of, what my taste in music is. But I wasn't alive for any of that shit. So I really have no business. Like, I should be listening to Harry Styles and fucking Beyonce. But I don't. Is what it is. Harry Styles' music is not too bad. So I guess I'll give it that. Like, it's decent. And compared to the other bullshit, whew, it looked like a fucking, I mean, it may as well have been a fucking Beatles album compared to goddamn Beyonce, which, boy, the Beyonce fans. And, oh yeah, going back to what I was saying, like, I usually try not to pay too much attention to, like, what's, the social media attacks of everything, but, like, boy, the old Beehive is not happy about it. Jesus. Like, I mean, for somebody to have so little talent, like Beyonce, you would think, I mean, it doesn't make sense that she would have such a fan base that is, boy, I mean, they're like the goddamn Khmer Rouge. Harry Styles needs to probably, like, lock himself into a fucking panic room like Jodie Foster for, I would say, the next year at least. I mean, these little fucking freaks are losing their minds about this. Which, I mean, who gives a shit? The Grammys are the most pointless, besides the Oscars. The Grammys and the Oscars are two of the most pointless moments in annual television. I mean, goddamn, the one to, like, award, like, to say who is the best at this is such a fucking objective, I mean, and I guess, if you poll enough people, then yeah, you get, like, a consensus, but I mean, they're just polling people who work for, like, record labels and shit, so of course they're just gonna be like, the guy that's on, or the singer that's on my label, that's who I vote for. I mean, they all basically Weinstein it, which is what that son of a bitch was doing back in the day. Like, I mean, if you look at, like, the movies that, especially during, like, the late 90s, movies that won the Oscar for Best Picture, and you think, wow, that fucking won? There's a good chance that it was a movie produced by Harvey Weinstein. Case in point, Shakespeare in Love versus Saving Private Ryan. Between the two, especially because of the fact that most people haven't even fucking heard of Shakespeare in Love. And if you have watched it, boy, does it suck. So you would think, Saving Private Ryan, clear win. No. Shakespeare in Love won Best Picture. And it was because Harvey Weinstein was basically bullying his fat ass around Hollywood, saying, like, basically, like, if you don't vote for this movie, you're a piece of shit, and I'll never work with any of you. I'll never hire any of your actors. Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, basically just blackmailing all of Hollywood to vote for this just dog shit movie. And, yeah, I mean, he did it with a few other movies, too. Like, and if you ever think, like, oh, that's weird that Jennifer Lawrence won Best Actress. When she, I mean, she's probably one of the worst actors of all time. And then you realize, oh, yeah, she was just, fucking wanking off old Weinstein to get that award. So, Oscars pointless. Grammys just as pointless. Like, to prove how fucking stupid the Grammys are, arguably one of the most important albums of all time is Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. Dark Side of the Moon was on the Billboard charts for 741 weeks in a row. Since God damn. Since that time, it has now gone over 950 weeks because it keeps just randomly appearing back on the Billboard chart. So 950 weeks, 741 weeks in a row. That's 15 years the Dark Side of the Moon was on the Billboard charts. How many Grammys do you think it was nominated for? Fucking zero. So, does it really fucking mean anything? I mean, it doesn't. And, like, there's tons of bands who are in artists who've never even been nominated, who are massively famous. Like, the Ramones, never been nominated. The Kinks, never been nominated. Oasis, who is fucking massively famous, never nominated. And, like, the Spice Girls have never been nominated, which, not necessarily I'm not like an advocate on behalf of the Spice Girls, but they're pretty goddamn big. ABBA didn't get a fucking Grammy nomination until this or until 2021 or 2022. Like, it's just dumb. It's pointless. There's, it's basically just everybody in that industry just like, sucking each other off and, one hand washes the other. It's all, that's all it is. The Dark Side of the Moon thing is just my perfect argument because, like, it's been on the Billboard charts twice as long as Thriller. That's impressive. Yet, doesn't get nominated for a goddamn thing. Actually, I don't even know if Pink Floyd has ever been nominated. Because The Wall was nominated and lost to... Actually, I think I saved some of these because I was just like, how in the fuck is this true? Yeah, So, 1970, the Beatles' Abbey Road album, which is the greatest Beatles album, loses to Blood, Sweat, and Tears. A band that nobody gave a shit about Blood, Sweat, them in the fucking 60s. Abbey Road loses to that. 1981, The Wall loses to Christopher Cross. Hey, Christopher Cross is not bad, but fucking hell, it's not The Wall. And then in 1985, Lionel Richie, Can't Slow Down, beat Purple Rain and Springsteen's Born in the USA. Hey, Jumbo. What the fuck else can you say about that? That's the fucking Grammys. That's how this award show works. It's fucking pointless. And for all these goddamn beehive fucking, losers to be like, basically sending out death threats to, the little twink from One Direction. This dude's gonna end up dead. He didn't have any control over that. But anyways, all right. So that'll end this section. I am going to start a new segment that I've been kind of working on for a little while because obviously massive fan of history, big history buff, but I like the kind of like weird, somewhat lesser known things about history, whether it's pop culture history, American history, world history, whatever. The like weird sort of, just not super well known topics in history. And so I'm going to start doing a weekly segment called Did You Know? Did you know is my favorite sentence in the world. I never get more excited than whenever somebody comes up to me and says, hey, did you know? Like, I immediately, like, my pecker grows about a quarter inch every time, just like kind of gets that little whoop. Because, like, chances are probably am going to know it, but I might not. And it might be something real fucking interesting. And then I like going and telling all the everybody else about it because I seem way smarter than I really am. So that is basically what the point of this segment will be, is that I am going to give to you that same feeling where I will hopefully tell you something that you find very interesting. You go tell it to people. You'll seem like you know more things than you really know, but it's really just because you listen to my dumbass regurgitate things that are not very well researched. So I should preface this by saying some of these things may not even be true. I think they're true, and I've read, a decent amount of shit about it, but I might be like skewing shit, but I might not. So it's a real Russian roulette of, pointless trivia. So with that being said, here we go. All right, so to kick off the very first Did You Know segment, I am going to do 3 stories of the golden age of Hollywood, which, to many people, they have this kind of like romanticized outlook on what, like, Hollywood up until about the late 50s, early 60s was like. It's dark. So I'm just going to preface this some of these stories are, some are funny, some are, whoa. So like we think of actors as being like, you know, in today's standards or like 80s to today's standards where they're just drugged out, basically pimped out by studios, having to deal with, you know, Harvey Weinstein jerking off into a ficus. And, you know, it comes with the territory. If you want to be in Lord of the Rings, you got to watch an orc, you know, sweat one out. And, you know, fair enough. But we have this idea that Hollywood, that's a like sort of new trend in Hollywood. It ain't. From the beginning. So I'll start with this one. So like from like the silent film era, which, you know, obviously those movies are fucking terrible. But, you know, they were all creeps. I mean, there was not a lot of, like, you know, noble fucking dudes and ladies back in the day. I mean, Charlie Chaplin, arguably one of the most famous actors of all time. And, you know, obviously got started in the silent film era. Massive pedophile. Like, legitimate pedophile. There was one woman who was basically like the silent film version of, her name was Marie Prevost. It's kind of like, I mean, she's a comedic actress, so I guess like the silent film version of, I keep wanting to say Melissa McCarthy, and I don't know why, because she's not fucking fun. Kristen Wiig. Let's say that. Like the silent film version of Kristen Wiig. She was eaten by her Dachshunds. Which, I mean, that's according to Kenneth Anger, who, I mean, there's a real deep dive and go into by Kenneth Anger. Maybe not necessarily the most reliable source, but it's a fucking awesome story to know that she basically, like, you know, kicked the bucket and then they found her and she was being eaten by her Dachshunds. Fatty Arbuckle, who was basically like the Chris Farley of the silent film era. I mean, he murdered a woman. But the craziest one to me is the first famous actress. So the first famous actress ever, the first Hollywood star, was a woman named Florence Lawrence. First name. Florence Lawrence was like, so before her, there was no, like, they didn't put actors' names on movies. Like, it didn't say, like, the, you know, this movie starring so-and-so. There usually wouldn't even be credits with actors' names. One, I mean, the main reason is because the studios didn't want people to become attached to a star and, like, make a celebrity, and then that celebrity leverage that to make more money. So they've been trying to fucking swindle people out of money for a long time. But that kind of changed with this guy named Carl Laemmle, who Carl Laemmle eventually made Universal Studios, made all those like horror movies like Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, Mummy. And he kind of got this like fascination with Florence Lawrence and wanted to make her like a star, because then people would, like, no matter what the movie is, pay to go see Florence Lawrence in a movie. So one of the things that they did was, so just to like give like a date on this, she was the first actor to have her name on a movie, and that was in 1906. So a long time ago. She was with this one production company who was not really like doing much with her. Then she switched to Carl Laemmle's production company, which at the time was called Imp Productions. And he thought it would be a good idea to do a publicity stunt where she died. So like he had her killed off from the original production company in a car wreck. Basically, that she would get hit by a car in the streets of New York City and then not be dead and become an actress for Universal. Well, Imp, and then eventually Universal. I mean, people back then were fucking idiots. Uh, so she ends up doing this, and the publicity stunt actually works like really well, and she becomes massively famous. But then she does this one movie again under like Carl Laemmle's Productions, where there is a controlled fire of like a house that wasn't that controlled, and she ends up getting like severely burned. And this is also kind of coinciding with like them, the introduction of like talkies, so people talking in movies, like instead of it just being a silent film. And apparently she had a super annoying voice, like a Fran Drescher, Rosie Perez times 1,000 nasally voice, and people hated it. So that mixed with the fact that she now looked like Freddy Krueger, career started to tank, and she became a massive alcoholic. And then, I mean, to put a ribbon on the story, she ended up drinking a ton of ant poison and cough syrup and died. So, that's a nice story. Wouldn't you say Hollywood is wild and has always been wild? All right, so the next story is an actor actually that I think quite a few people would be familiar with, is an actor named Errol Flynn. So Errol Flynn was very famous for playing like pirates, playing Robin Hood. He's kind of like a sort of like a Daniel Craig, George Clooney, like combination. Like very kind of hard to explain, but Errol Flynn was like just insanely like attractive, very charismatic. He also had a real attraction for younger women, which is a common theme throughout the history of Hollywood. Basically, he was the R. Kelly of the 30s. He just, as far as we know, didn't piss on anyone. Although he was also, as you are about to find out, a massive drunk. So chances are he probably did piss on someone. I mean, if you're drunk enough, you'll just start to piss anywhere, and a 13-year-old might catch some shrapnel. So Errol Flynn had as his career is progressing, also like this drinking problem just starts getting wild, like super out of hand, to the point where he was drinking 3 quarts of vodka a day. That's a lot. And back then, people were like 5'4", 120 pounds. So 3 quarts of vodka in that tiny little body. Whew. He even got to like a point where he was banned from drinking on movie sets. And so he would inject oranges with vodka and then just eat the oranges on the set and get drunk. Which, I mean, I've done the same thing with gummy bears, and whoa, it'll get you there. So yeah, Errol Flynn, massive alcoholic, real iffy, attraction to the younger ladies. He met his second wife leaving the courthouse for a statutory rape trial that he was on. She was working at some like food stand outside the courthouse, leaving the trial where he is leaving the court. So Errol Flynn is leaving the courthouse for his statutory rape trial for banging like a 13 or 14-year-old. Meets a person who is also underage, marries her. Woo! I mean, that is the balls on a dude like that to be able to just say like, hey, I'm about to just do it again right now. And I'm about to do it in front of everybody. Everybody's going to see me pick up on a teenager. Anyway, so he does that. So Errol Flynn's career starts to dwindle because he's becoming an alcoholic. The pedophilia stuff is getting a little odd to a lot of people. So they're like, I don't know if we want to be hanging out with Errol Flynn. And so he, at this time, becomes really fascinated by the Cuban Revolution. So this is going into like the late 50s. He becomes fascinated by the Cuban Revolution and Fidel Castro, who at the time is trying to overthrow the leader of Cuba at that time, Fulgencio Batista. And Errol Flynn just becomes super infatuated by Fidel Castro. So he decides to go to Cuba and make a fake documentary movie where he is like a war reporter on the front lines with these Cuban guerrilla soldiers and like, documenting the revolution. And so he goes to Cuba with this woman who, let me see if I can find her name. I had it written down. Beverly Adland, who is 15. And he's married to this woman. Or I think maybe just boyfriend, girlfriend. Man friend, girlfriend, really. Goes to Cuba with her, with Beverly Adland, 15 years old. They make this movie called Cuban Rebel Girls, which sounds like a shitty porno from the 70s, but whatever. He hangs out with Castro for a while, and this is like young Fidel Castro, so pre-dictator Castro. And he just like falls in love with this dude, like falls in love with Castro, and like develops this like weird friendship with him that gets tested real fast because Errol Flynn is an actor, so he's a pussy basically, and thinks he can handle what it's like to be a guerrilla soldier in Cuba. He ain't about it. Fidel Castro starts just executing people in front of Errol Flynn and making Errol Flynn come out and watch. He's like, hey, come out and watch this. And there'd be like 2 or 3 people who were like, spies for Batista. And Fidel Castro's like, hey, watch this. And just blast these dudes. And Errol Flynn's like, uh-oh. He's like, maybe Castro's a little crazier than I thought he was. So he ends up still making this movie, but is like, I'm getting out of here. Like, I'm done with Castro, done hanging out with these dudes. I am in over my head. Leaves, has a heart attack a few months later at the age of 50, dies. When they do his autopsy, the coroner, or whoever it is that does autopsies, the coroner, I think, right? The coroner says that basically his liver was deteriorating at like an unprecedented pace, and that he had the internal organs of a 75-year-old man. Dude, I mean, me and Errol Flynn have a lot in common. Not everything in common. But boy, if somebody cut me open right now, I mean, I ain't drinking about 3 or 4 years, but boy, I'm sure things do not look good in here. So, me and Errol Flynn, and I also have a fascination with Fidel Castro and dictators. So, and could easily see myself becoming friends with a dictator, and then getting way in over my head and not being able to get out. So. Yeah, so there's Errol Flynn. Last story, pretty funny one, but also I still think pretty crazy. So, and definitely I would say the more famous out of the 3 actors is an actor named Cary Grant, who, if you don't know who Cary Grant is or was, he was in like a few Hitchcock movies. In North by Northwest. North by Northwest is for sure his most famous role. Cary Grant, kind of like a straight-laced dude, seemingly straight-laced dude, like a lot of actors in the 50s. According to my granddad, queer is a $3 bill. His words, not mine. But yeah, Cary Grant, seemingly just a normal, straight-laced actor. Kind of boring, but a good actor. Cary Grant kind of got roped into doing experiments with LSD in the late 50s before anybody really knew much about LSD. So this is like pre Timothy Leary, pre Beatles, like any real like public awareness of what LSD is. Cary Grant was kind of told by this doctor, which I have the doctor's name, Mortimer Hartman, which is a super 50s name. So Dr. Morty basically told Cary Grant, like, I can kind of get rid of any of your, like, your anxieties, your stresses, because Cary Grant at the time was having, in some ways, like a midlife crisis breakdown. Like a very private breakdown, but a breakdown. And this doctor who was friends with was like, there's this drug that we've been kind of testing out called like lysergic acid, whatever LSD stands for. And I think it would change you. So Cary Grant starts doing these doctor-administered like acid trips. Completely changes his life. In 3 years, so from I have this right. Yeah, from 1958 to 1961, Cary Grant goes on over 100 LSD trips and becomes obsessed with it. Is like telling everybody in Hollywood about LSD. Like, he becomes like the proponent of LSD, and does this like interview with, I think, like Playboy magazine, where he's talking about LSD and how it's changed his life. And then that's Timothy Leary reads that interview, and Timothy Leary, who's like a professor, I believe, at Harvard, gets attracted to LSD, and then that really ramps it up. And he starts hanging out with like the Beatles, and the Beatles start doing LSD, and then it just becomes the drug of the 60s. But it's all really because of Cary Grant. I've never done LSD. I've done mushrooms twice. Both times I did way too little to have anything really, like, anything of note happen. All I did was feel kind of fuzzy. Like when your foot's asleep, or like you sit on your hand and give yourself a stranger. That's kind of like what my body felt like, but I didn't see anything. There was no, like, kind of a disappointment, but it felt all right. Cary Grant said that one time while he was on an LSD trip, that he had this vision that he himself was a giant penis rocket that was launching off of Earth and going into space. Which, if you watch a movie with Cary Grant and you see this, like, dude in a suit and tie, very, like, clean shave, like, very, like, just a buttoned up kind of like dweeb, but sort of cool. And then you just picture that at one point in his life, he dropped acid and thought he was a dick rocket. To me, that is fascinating. So that will end this segment for this week. I got a lot more. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you don't, sorry, not sorry. I'm still going to do it because it's fun for me. So enjoy. Tell everybody you know that Errol Flynn was a pedo who hung out with Castro and used to drink vodka or eat vodka oranges. And Cary Grant at one point thought he was a dick rocket. Goodbye.